Welcome, my name is Peter Strong. I'm a professional online psychotherapist based in Colorado, and I offer online therapy via Skype to help people manage anxiety and depression more effectively using the techniques of mindfulness therapy. This is a system of psychotherapy that I've been developing over the last 10 or more years now that seems to be extremely effective for anxiety and also depression, but basically it's very effective for helping you heal the underlying anxiety itself directly. And it does this in a variety of ways, one of which is by helping you work on those patterns of reactive thinking that feed the anxiety. So with agoraphobia, the typical situation is that we get obsessed with anxiety-producing thoughts about what will happen to us if we leave our safety zone, for example. That's a common kind of thought pattern. The fear of having a panic attack in public, the fear of fainting or being sick or anything else like that. These are fed by a whole system of internal dialogue that is relentless in feeding that anxiety. So I'm often asked, how can I overcome my agoraphobia without using medication? And to do this effectively, you have to address this underlying psychological process of reactive thinking that's feeding your anxiety. Medications have their place. The selective serotonin uptake inhibitors, these have their place, but medications can't change that underlying process. All the medication will ever do is reduce symptoms for a while, but that's not really healing the problem. It's not changing the essential underlying psychological habits that are creating your anxiety and fear. So this is why it's recommended that you look into process-oriented psychotherapy like cognitive behavioral therapy or exposure and prevention type protocols, because these help you actually deal with that underlying reactive process. I teach mindfulness-based exposure therapy, which is really very effective indeed for agoraphobia specifically. It really helps you develop a strategic approach to overcoming your anxiety. So some of the exposure therapy models are okay up to a point, but they don't really tell you how to process the anxiety itself directly, what to do with that emotion. In mindfulness work, we work exclusively on reprocessing that emotion, that habit that gets activated. If you'd like to learn more about the mindfulness approach for healing anxiety, including agoraphobia, then simply go to my website, learn more, and email me with any questions you may have. Of course, it's very convenient to be able to do your psychotherapy sessions online if you're suffering from agoraphobia. And that's one of the reasons why I specialize in Skype therapy. It's very important that you can see each other. That's why we use Skype. This improves the quality of communication and makes the therapy sessions much more effective. So during our sessions together, I will teach you how to develop that strategy for overcoming your anxiety using mindfulness-based exposure therapy. So what does this entail? Well, it entails designing a series of challenges that are manageable, but that tend to produce anxiety. So it might be simply leaving the comfort of your own home and walking to a shop or going to a mall or any number of things. You will know what those triggers are that trigger your anxiety and panic attacks. We design a series of challenges where we basically take one challenge and we prepare for it using mindfulness methods. This basically means playing the challenge through in the mind, visualizing going to the mall, for example, and then watching for the anxiety reaction and all of the reactive thoughts that get triggered when that anxiety is triggered in the mind. When we find those anxiety thoughts and the emotion itself, we then start to build a different kind of relationship with it that's based on consciousness, on mindfulness, where we can become the observer of these thoughts and emotions, but without becoming identified with them. The real problem with all anxiety disorders is the problem of reactive identification. Thoughts are not the real problem. The problem is that we become identified with them. The same with the emotional reactions, the anxiety itself or fear. In itself, it's not a problem until we become identified with it. And this is where we basically contract into the thought stream or into the emotion, and we become a victim of that mental state. We essentially lose consciousness and we become controlled by those reactive thoughts and the emotional reactivity. However, we can reverse this by training with those very specific thoughts and the emotion itself that gets triggered during one of our challenges. So we learn to build a conscious relationship and overcome this habit of reactive identification. You can sit with the thoughts and the emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them, without becoming controlled by them, without becoming lost in that reactive process that simply feeds the anxiety. So that's the first part of the training, a big part of mindfulness training. Learning to see thoughts and emotions as objects in the mind and not becoming identified with them. The second part of mindfulness therapy is really learning how to work with the emotion itself and help it heal. So we work with the anxiety that gets triggered in agoraphobia. We look at the specific emotions and we start to build this conscious relationship with them, but then we bring in the element of compassion. This is where we basically learn how to comfort that emotion itself, seeing it as an object. really seeing it like a child. The child cannot escape its own fear very easily because it doesn't have a lot of consciousness. The parent comes and comforts the child when the child's afraid, and the child is able to absorb that comfort and confidence from the parent, and that's how the child is able to overcome its fear in a particular situation. So there's a tremendous healing effect that happens through this relationship, in that case between the child and the parent, that allows the child to overcome its fear. We cultivate this same kind of relationship with our emotions. We treat them in the same way. We develop a conscious and non-reactive presence, that's like the parent, with the anxiety, that's like the child. And when the anxiety, if you like, feels the presence of your non-reactive, bigger self, what we call your true self, then that allows the anxiety to resolve itself, to let go of its own fear. So establishing this kind of internal relationship is essential to healing the anxiety and overcoming the anxiety reactions. There are other things that we do during mindfulness therapy for agoraphobia, and I'll explain all of this to you in much more detail during our sessions. But that's the basic idea. We pick out a challenge or a series of challenges, we rehearse for those challenges, and we take care of any emotions that get triggered as we imagine doing the challenge. Then we go and execute the challenge, and then we would work on any emotions that are still triggered during the challenge. So we would do that afterwards. So we train with those emotions and those thoughts in the same way. And then we repeat the challenge, and we do this in a systematic way until you develop a desensitization to the situation. Basically, you're healing the anxiety reaction. You're neutralizing it, so it no longer gets activated by going to the mall or whatever it might be. When you take this systematic approach, you'll see results quite quickly. And most people that I work with see quite remarkable changes within 3 or 4 sessions. You have to do the work, of course. You have to be committed to prepare and carry through these challenges in a systematic way every day, and until you build more and more confidence. But it works. This approach works. Mindfulness therapy for agoraphobia is, in my opinion, the most effective approach there is out there. I believe it's more effective than CBT because it works at the emotional level as well as working at the cognitive level. So you have to heal the fear underneath in order to be able to break free from the thoughts that are created from that fear. Working with thoughts alone is not going to heal the fear directly. So if you'd like to get started with me and overcome your agoraphobia without using medication, then please simply email me and let's schedule a trial session. You'll see even after the first session, you'll get some idea of how this works. And when you start practicing the methods that I teach, you will get results quite quickly, as I say. And we build on your challenge protocols each week. We work on them. I will guide you through this, and then you practice it at home, and then we move on to new challenges, and we build out our challenges, taking in more and more limiting behaviors until eventually you have no anxiety at all. That's our goal. And it is totally possible if you take a systematic approach. So please call me and let's schedule a session. Go to my website and contact me, and we can schedule a session at a time that works for you. I see people all over the world, specifically working on anxiety disorders and agoraphobia. So please contact me if you'd like to learn more about online therapy for agoraphobia that does not use medication. Thank you.